Hi, this is Patsy with a Z. Welcome to Joy on Paper Live, a program for writers and those who dream of writing, and for everyone who wants to know the story behind the book. And I have a great story behind this book today by Mary E. McKnight, and I am so happy to welcome her to Joy on Paper Live. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Patsy. How are you?
Oh, it's a thrill to be talking to you. I love memoirs, and this one is particularly lots of fun because you bring us back to a period of time that is just fascinating, and you fill it with music and everything to platform shoes. Does anybody remember?
Tell me, do you still have a pair?
Oh, I don't, but boy, I love those shoes. I It was like walking on a cloud, wasn't it?
Oh, it was because your foot didn't bend,
Yeah,
but you just moved
yeah.
along.
It was so
It was
great.
beautiful. Yeah, it was.
It was absolutely wonderful. So here we are. We're going to talk about this great book, and it's so wonderful. Of course, I've always loved anything to do with the military, and then I've always been interested in Germany because of, and particularly this period that you're talking about. It's always intrigued me. And I've had actually quite a few authors on who have written spy books during that period.
Ah,
So they're always telling me about their research and everything. And you're a font of research, right?
oh, I have a lot of research, not about spies, but when I wrote the book, I realized how much I didn't know. And I just went down that rabbit hole of research, which is one of my favorite holes to be in, and just discovered so many things that had happened in that area prior to my living there. And then also, while I was there, things that I took, like my father's building was bombed by the Bader Meinhof gang. And I went to high school, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes walking from there. And they continued with classes that day. We didn't go home. And my dad said, "Oh, we were bombed." I was like, "Okay, what's for dinner?" You know?
Exactly. Let's start at the beginning of this because explain to people how you are a military brat and it all comes from that.
Yes, it does. I still consider myself an Army brat. My dad was career Army, and he and my mom were married in 1959. I have an older sister born in 1960. I was born in 61, and before I turned 16, we moved 9 times. And I thought that was normal, and that's the way that everybody lived. That you would sometimes switch schools in the middle of the year, that you would easily be able to talk to complete strangers, and quickly found out that after dad was out of the military and I was no longer in that culture, that in fact that was really not the way the world operated. And I was very sad about that.
It's fascinating. Now this is a the memoir is based on the 3 years that you spent in Germany, which is a
Yes.
fascinating time. But before we get into that, what other countries did you go to, other countries, or were the rest of your assignments in America?
All the rest of our stations were in America. I started out in Oklahoma. That's where I was born. And when I was researching the book, my father never spoke of any of this, and he was still alive when I wrote the book. Apparently, he was an engineer working on the missile silos that I didn't have any idea. My dad worked on missile silos. The missiles were, of course, facing to go to Russia, and that's where I started. We moved then to Fort Belvoir in Virginia, then Nebraska, Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, just down the road from the prison, which we thought was really normal that you would live near a military prison. We moved to Virginia when dad went to Vietnam, and then to Rockville, Maryland, and then finally over to Germany. So prior to that, I'd never been out of the country, but certainly different parts of our country are quite different. Being on the East Coast was very different than living in the Midwest.
So how many years was he in Vietnam?
He was in Vietnam for one. He was there during the Tet Offensive, which I didn't know about at all. When my dad came back from Vietnam, we met him, and this was back when you could walk right onto the tarmac, and everybody looked the same. They were all wearing their greens, and they were all really thin, and they all had crew cuts. So we kept thinking, oh, there's dad. I was 8 years old, but my mom knew. She knew when she saw him, and she went running to him, and he swept her in the air and twirled her around, and they kissed. We were so embarrassed. Just, oh my gosh, look at them. And when he came back, it was like he never left. He was no different after a year of war.
Probably inside, but they never tell you. They never tell
Oh,
you.
no,
No, it's
no,
my dad was in the military, and he never, not just he was just in World War II, but never talked about that. You,
no.
I had to drag it out of. They never tell you. It's nothing. It's funny. But now for you, what? When did you hear about you are going to Germany? Were you excited about that?
I was. It was my first year in junior high school. I was in seventh grade, and this was back when elementary school went through sixth. And junior high school was weird. It was switching classes, and my friends were now interested in boys, and I really wasn't. So I thought, oh, good, I can just get away from all that. And that was the joy of being a military brat. It was like, oh, good, things aren't working out. I'll be out of there. And back then, of course, there were no cell phones. The only way you would communicate would be by airmail. And if you didn't write to somebody, you didn't have to hear from them again. And your problems were over. I was excited for that very shallow reason because I didn't like junior high school, and I thought, good, I'll get out of here and it's bound to be better. Didn't I did not know one thing about World War II. We hadn't gotten to that part of history in school yet. And I'd heard of the Nazis, but beyond that, I didn't know anything. And my father went over a few months before we did. And I guess he told my mother to tell us we were not to talk about Nazis. We were not to talk about concentration camps. We didn't even know what that was. We were ambassadors, and we were there to help the German people recover themselves and their culture and to demonstrate what democracy was. Now, I was 12 turning 13, and this was my job. This was on my shoulders. I thought, I don't even know what all that means. I can barely get along with my sisters. How am I'm going to be an ambassador? I just, I had no, you're a military kid. You've got to, this is Air Force, but you just got to straighten up and fly right. Whatever dad says, that's what you do.
Oh, that's funny. So you're 13, and you write about your arrival in Germany. Let's start right at the beginning because you write about it. It's just so interesting, and I think people will find it fascinating. Your trip to Germany.
Yes, like I said, my dad he was there already. So my mom and my two sisters and our cat, who rode below down in wherever animals rode then, were on our way to Germany, which took forever and a day back then. And we didn't know what to expect. I could barely sleep on the plane. Every time my head would lay on my older sister, she'd shove me over. So we get off the plane, totally jet lagged. I'm thinking, where's a bed? Where's some food? My dad meets us very briskly, kisses mom, and we're off. And back then, we each carried a suitcase, which was made of was Samsonite. It's hard green leather with I don't know what the handle was made of, but it was not flexible. And it weighed a ton because mom had said, pack what you'll need for a few weeks. What do you know at 12, turning 13? It was ridiculous. I see this stand where you can buy carts to carry luggage. And I know my dad saw me looking. I know he did. And I looked over there, and you didn't really ever say to dad, hey, let's get or let's do. Had to be dad's idea. but I noticed he wasn't like getting a cart. So I said, hey, wouldn't it be like really fun if we, got a cart and maybe, put the luggage on there? That could be fun. Nothing. My dad is just walking like we're in a march. Nothing. And we're just walking, and my sisters are glaring at me. You shouldn't have said that. You probably provoked dad. And I'm like, oh my God, how big is this stupid airport? Again, I'm 12 turning 13. We're in the middle of Germany, but I'm not wowed. I am absolutely angry that I'm carrying this suitcase. We're walking and we come upon this shop, Mr. Somebody's sex shop. I can't remember what his name is. And of course, back then at age 12, 13, 13, we didn't know anything about sex. We didn't know, but we knew looking in that window because the mannequins were nude and everything was showing hair. I hope I can say this, but nipples, and there were toys, and my older sister and I are laughing hysterically because we were so embarrassed. And my little sister saying, "What is it?" And mom's going, "What? What are you girls laughing at? You're being the ugly Americans." And of course, we are dying. What is this place that we've moved to? That these things are just out in the open. And it was horrifying. It was absolutely horrifying. And so this is my first glimpse of Germany. I'm like, this is the way it's going to be. It's going to be awful. And I'm starving. We're jet lagged, and of course we couldn't ask dad for let's stop and get some food because that would be asking dad to do something. It had to be dad's idea. That food smelled so good. Nope. We had an agenda, we had a time, we had a car to get, but we just kept on walking. We're just walking with those suitcases. I thought I'm going to pass out from blood sugar. No one's going to ever find me. It's just going to be me in this Samsonette suitcase. We get to the car. And again, we haven't seen dad for months. Everything better fit in the back of this car. And of course, I'm thinking, oh my God, my suitcase is going to be the one that's not going to fit. It's going to be me. I'm going to be the one. We're going to have to leave all my things behind. I'm so middle child. It's all me. It's all my fault. Dad packs the suitcase like precision, spatial, perceptual, everything fitting like, I guess, modern day Tetris. Thank God my suitcase was not the problem. We got it all in. He got it all in. Told us to get in, put your seatbelts on, let's go. So, that's what we did. We just got in the car. We'd never heard of the Autobahn, had no idea what it was. All of a sudden, we are flying down this road. The three of us are crammed in the back of our VW Squareback, moving at like warp speed. And I thought the only thing keeping us from going through the windshield is the fact that we're wedged in here together because we're going to die. It's going to happen. But what was amazing is cars are flying by us. We look at just a little bit at not the thermostat, the speedometer. Dad is going 90 miles an hour. Cars are just flying. I'm like, what is this place? There's a sex shop. There are no speed limits. There are none. There are no speed limits. I'm like, where are we? Where are we? Before that, we had to get shots, all these shots. And I thought, okay, we're living in a third world country. We've got to be. That's all there is to this because dad's not sharing anything. He's not saying, hey, just so you know, there's no speed limit, nothing. We're just driving. We're just driving. Mom's not asking any questions. We don't know where we're going. We're just driving. Three kids, three teenagers in the back, and we're starving. I've got to pee. Haven't peed for 24 hours because I was too embarrassed to ask the person next to me to move.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm dying. I've got to pee. I've got to eat. I think I'm going to die of a crash. We get to the gate, which, I mean, we didn't know there was going to be a gate. There are MPs, military police, at the gate. We're used to this because we're used to being on post. Dad flips out his military ID. They salute him, so we know they're of lesser rank. We know this. All of a sudden, everything's in English. We're like, oh, good. Now we can read. Now we're going to be okay. It doesn't take that long. Dad pulls up. This is our house. This is our quarters. We knew the quarters was where we lived. It said Colonel James R. McKnight. We thought, okay, we're home. We'll use the bathroom. We'll get something to eat. Nope. My dad says he's going to unload the cat, put her in the bathroom, litter box, food. We're walking across the street to the Ambassador Arms Hotel where there's a mess hall. That's where we're going to eat. And by that time I wasn't hungry because I was so hungry. I wasn't hungry anymore. We're going to eat now because there's going to be no food until dinner. We're getting acclimated. I could not give a rat's ass about acclimating. I had to pee. I wasn't hungry. I was tired. We're marching across the street to the Ambassador Arms and grilled cheese and tomato soup. That's all there was. And set down in front of us, and we were expected to eat. I took one bite. I could barely choke it down. It's on Wonder Bread. You remember Wonder Bread. It like sticks to all your teeth and your tongue, and I'm sure it was like either Velveeta or American cheese. I don't know. I was thankful that it was something familiar, but I could barely eat. I did get to use the bathroom, which I was thankful for. And we got to march back to our house, and my mom is like, oh, look at the birds. Look at the trees. And I'm like, oh my God, we've seen birds. We've seen trees. Let's get home. And of course, you couldn't say anything. And I'm looking at my older sister like, oh my God, this is never going to end. This period of time is going to last forever. Yeah. Again, we're in Germany and we're complaining quietly.
Oh, this is so funny. It's so funny. It's so funny. Oh gosh, you're making my jaws achy now from laughing. And I remember the first time that I was on the Autobahn, and it is for somebody who's it's exactly as you pictured it. You cannot believe it. Cannot believe it. And especially, you're fantastic. So here you are in Frankfurt, by the way. It's Frankfurt.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's Frankfurt.
So it's Frankfurt. I've spent a lot of time in Germany too, but I just once was in Frankfurt. But so here you are in Frankfurt, of course, on a American military base. That's why you get Wonder Bread, for goodness sakes.
That's why.
In a country that has some of the best bread in the entire world, they give you Wonder Bread.
In the world. Yeah.
And I was really surprised recently. I haven't been to a big grocery store for a long time. I order it in, but they still sell that Wonder Bread with the circles on.
I know.
How can they still sell that? I can't believe it.
I have no idea.
I was shocked.
Couldn't either.
I was shocked because I was so surprised. I couldn't believe they still even made it. Who buys it?
Oh, I know. Yeah, and that people eat it. I'm like, look at all this delicious bread that we can now get. And you can actually get German bread now as well.
Oh.
And that beautiful dark pumpernickel is just...
pumpernickel bread. You can't... in Germany, the breakfast, like in a major hotel, they have just a table with bread. But I always headed for the pumpernickel because that's my favorite.
Oh, mine too. That and a slab of unsalted butter. Oh,
that's it. And the funny thing is, because they don't use any preservatives, in Europe I never gained any weight. But here you come and you eat this stuff that has all this junk in it, you gain weight. But in Germany and Austria, where I always went skiing, we ate tons of bread. Because
yes. Oh, and always with butter. Always.
With butter. Nobody ever heard of let's make it believe butter or whatever it is they have.
Yeah. Let's pretend this is real food.
Yeah, or worse, it's made out of some kind of a vegetable. They have these vegetable butters, and I thought, what? What? I want real
Real.
German
Yeah.
butter. German butter.
Oh, yes. Oh, and of course back then I didn't have any idea. Wonder Bread was that's what we ate.
Oh yeah, on the base. Yeah, I know. I lived in other countries and I shopped sometimes on the base, so I know what it's like. You get all the stuff when you have beautiful, wonderful food in Germany. That's for sure.
Oh, we learned that very quickly. Yes, for which I am very thankful. I tried something that was labeled as Brot, Brot. And I thought, oh, this is going to be so good. It's going to be a hard German roll on the outside, and inside it's just going to be this delicious, moist. It was horrible. It was chewy. And I thought, what? Chewy? That's not German bread. It's got to have some oomph to it.
Yeah,
A roll needs to go, and
yeah.
then you get into the moistness and where you put the butter. And
Oh,
yeah, maybe I
yeah.
turned into a Euro snob. I don't know.
So now you have your house. It's a nice little house.
Yes,
They built these houses on the base for everybody. And that brings us to a very interesting story how you discovered that your house was still there years
yes.
later. So tell us
It
about
was
this.
it was 2017, and I was reading the online news, and this article came up about a live World War II bomb found in West Germany. So I clicked on it, and as I'm reading, it was a BBC article. They mentioned Wismarstrasse. I thought, oh my stars, that's where I lived. And so I'm reading more and more about this article. It turns out this live World War II bomb that they had found when they were constructing other facilities, these are the German people behind, that it was in what would have been our backyard. And I thought, oh my stars. I used to play back there. I played hide and seek back there because that's what you did at 12 and 13 and 14. You still played outside. We played back there. We would cross back there to go to the bowling alley, and there was a live bomb under there. And it scared me to death because that, when you're a military brat, wherever you lived, that's your life. Oh, when I lived in Nebraska, our house looked like this. And now, of course, on Google Earth, you can put your address in and look at your old house. And so on this BBC article, it had other links, and I read more about it. But I thought, oh my gosh, I have to call my parents and tell them there's a bomb behind what I called our house. So I called them, and my dad, the German people are quite capable of disarming the bomb, and I don't know why you're worried. And so I got mom on the phone, and I said, Mom, there's a bomb behind our house. And she said, well, something like, well, isn't that a wonder that all these years later, I'm like, oh my God, say it with me, somebody, not somebody else. So I quick wrapped up the conversation, and I called my sisters, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a bomb in our old backyard. And my older sister was like, oh, just think of the history that would have been so different had we not lived. And I'm like, I want some drama here and somebody to really live in the, oh my God, we could have died. And I said, our children wouldn't have been alive. And my little sister said, it's the ones that we created wouldn't have been here. And I'm like, the ones we created? That sounds like they're aliens. I got to talk to you two later. I thought, now who is going to play into this drama with me? And I thought, the one that I created, my daughter. She's a teenager. She'll be like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Well, she starts on her computer looking up our old house. And I'm like, what are you doing? I could have died there. Yeah, but you didn't. Now let's see if your old house is there. And I'm like, of course it's still, there's a bomb in the backyard. And you know how quick their fingers can find things. And she zeroes in and says, oh, there's your house. And oh my gosh, I saw our house for the first time since we left in 1977. And for that moment, I was back there. I was in that house. I was in my room. I was 14 years old again, listening to those gigantic headphones that we had that would connect to our stereo systems. And then I thought, oh my gosh, what if they can't disarm it? What if it's gone forever? They did disarm it. They evacuated, I forget how many miles of Frankfurt, because those bombs were meant to destroy neighborhoods. And there was actually nothing there when that bomb was dropped. I did the research. That property was owned by the Rothschilds and was taken from them when the Nazis took over and sent the Jewish people to concentration camps. So the place that was built when the US military came in, and those quarters, those houses were originally built for the generals. And then I couldn't find when the colonels and lieutenant colonels were allowed to take over those houses. The generals got bigger houses, but that's how I restarted that interest in that period of time.
Ugh, it's such a funny story. It's really incredible. It's really incredible.
It
So,
is. And then I saw a picture of the bomb, and it was gigantic and just,
and you
I
you
mean,
just skip
just play
around
over it.
just on
Oh
top
yeah.
of it. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can hide in this tree, or I
Well,
can
that
cross
brings us back
over.
to
And
your sisters, who are a little bit more blasé than you. So tell us a little bit
yes.
about your sisters, because my goodness gracious, tell
Yeah.
us about them.
I have an older sister, April, who's 15 months older than me, and she was perfect at everything. Her hair was perfect. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. She was like so intelligent. She just knew things. She got straight A's in school. She was popular. And she, back then, made it her business to let me know just how imperfect I was. And because I was just that much younger than her, I believed everything she said about me. And at that tender age of 12 and 13, she really had me believing that I was just hideous looking, that everything I did was awkward, and she wouldn't do it in so everybody else could hear, but just so only I could hear. She would say things like, "Is that what you're going to wear?"
Oh, I love
And
that. Yeah, I
I
just
I would I would look at myself and think, "Oh, I'm just hideous. I'm hideous. I don't know what to wear." And she, for our lives, especially over in Germany, she was awful to me. Just really, any chance she got was just a twist in the back. And again, I believed everything she said. We were so close in age that how could she be wrong? She was right about everything else. And I lived in her shadow. I really did. And I thought, I'm never going to be good at anything. I'm never going to be anybody. She's going to be somebody, but I'm just going to be nobody. I am nobody. And my little sister is a year and a half younger, my sister Laura. And at the time we went to Frankfurt, the age difference, although only a year and a half different, developmentally completely different. She was, although we were still playing like outside, I was done playing Barbies and that kind of thing. And her heart was just broken because the person that she used to play with me didn't want to play that with her anymore. So I was breaking my little sister's heart, and my older sister was she's just crushing me. Her thumb was right on my head, and I didn't take it off. And I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell them how mean she was to me. I just thought this was the way
you know
sisters are.
that's what happens with especially girls who are near near an age. So that happens, and look what happened to you. You grew up to be so beautiful that
Oh,
so
thank you.
you don't have to worry about your looks, because you're now you're now a beauty. So you made it.
Oh, thank you. And tell me if I'm getting to this too soon, but when I finished writing it, it was so cathartic to write. And I am not, I always had trouble with the word forgive. Forgive this person, forgive that person. And I always thought, well, no, no, they were terrible. Why should I forgive them? I don't like what they did. But I came to this compassionate understanding that she was just as insecure as I was. And I didn't know that then. I didn't know that until I wrote this book, until I finished this book. And I felt this weight come off of me. Like, you don't have to live in her shadow anymore. And why were you there for so long?
Yeah,
Why did you
exactly.
stay
So
there?
often, that's what happens when you do a memoir. You do have this insight. You do realize some of my ideas at that time were like, I wasn't all there either. And in fact, probably her teasing and all of this nonsense was actually good for you because it toughened you up.
Oh, it did.
It toughened you up. And so you had a different perspective on life because of it. You learned a lot. And in the end, she's your sister and you love her. That's
Yes. And she is one of my biggest supporters. When I told her I was writing this book, at first she was worried. She said, "Oh, I wasn't that nice to you during that time." I said, "No, you weren't." And at my first draft, I left out a lot of things because I felt guilty at how awful she was to me. Doesn't that sound weird? I felt guilty because she was so mean to me, and I didn't want to make her out as a bad guy. And my developmental editor, whom I hired, said, "Mary, I love this book, but who who cares?" And I said, "What do you mean, who cares?" She said, "You need to banish the censor because there's a story in there and you're not letting it out." And as she said, "Who is your censor?" I thought, my censor? Nobody's censoring me. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I think it's my dad. I don't want my dad to like know all this stuff because I never said anything. And I don't want to make my sisters feel bad. But I thought, let me just see what happens if I just go back in. And that's when the story came out. That's when the richness came out in the book.
exactly, exactly. And I recognize that as I'm reading it. And I was thinking, I didn't know the final outcome of the book. So as I'm reading it, I'm saying, okay, she's writing this about her sister. It's true. I know it's true. And from a reader's point of view, you say, oh, that's bad, that's bad. But always in the back of my mind was the thought, okay, she's learning something from this. Eventually, this is going to help her, toughen her up, make her understand people, life, everything. And so it was good. It was good that you put it in. And I think other people will recognize that too among their own family because at the end, you have these situations, but then you come together and you love your sisters. That's
Yes, that is absolutely true. And your point about the learning, I'm a teacher, I'm still teaching, and I made it my goal that every child who came into my class would feel loved, respected, find their strengths, things that were difficult for them, we can reframe into what do you want to do about this? How do you want to work with this? Instead of, oh, these are your needs, you're weak at this. Because I could not stand hearing those things myself. But I thought, I want these kids to develop. How do I develop this roundness? And it's not by criticizing them. I learned, but that learning was the I don't want to do it this way, but I want people to come out round.
yeah.
And at my book launch last night, my first year, one of my first year students came. I had no idea he was coming there. And he was the first person in line. And I said, "Oh, who do I make this out to?" He passes me his driver's license. I read the name and said, "Oh oh my stars. I don't know if I should say his name on lines. Blah, blah, blah. It's you. And he said, I didn't know that you'd remember me. And I remembered him and loved him. I hugged him. I cried. And I thought, oh my gosh, I did it. I did what I set out to do. This is a full grown man in his 40s who came out and said, I remember you because you were so kind and you loved me even though I tested you. He said, you called me out. You said, this is unacceptable and I love you. Let's work on this. It was just like proof positive. Wow.
Say it.
And
Just say his first name so that we have it. What's his?
Michael.
Michael. That's wonderful that you came out for this exciting time when you publish a book. And Michael's a great guy, that's for sure.
Yes, yes, and he's still a great guy. He
Well,
still is. And wow.
well,
And my little sister was there. She flew out and she remembered him because I talked about him. He was challenging. And we just all hugged Old Family Week. And as you say about my sisters, my older sister called in from, she lives in Iceland now.
Iceland.
And
oh, wow.
yes, and is just so proud of me.
Well,
Again, I'm
they
skipping ahead.
usually have a big book convention up in Iceland every year. You have to go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Oh, it's a big.
Thank you,
It's a
Pat.
very major book convention. You have to go up to Iceland.
Oh,
Lots
well,
of
thank
the
you.
authors who have been on my program have been to the Iceland book events. They love.
Thank you so
They
much.
read. I think they per capita they read more books than any place else in the world.
Yeah,
in English.
And my
So
sister said that is everybody reads.
So you're going to have a reunion with your sister. You're heading to Iceland. Check it out. I don't remember the month, but it's sometime in the spring. So you better check it out and get up there.
I will. Thank you. See what you've done. These are these connections.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of the, I really would not go. I don't go to conventions very much anymore. After COVID, I just didn't want to get on planes and stuff. But if I was going to do one, I would do the Iceland one.
Done. Thank you.
You're going to Iceland. And
yes.
Tell your sister, I know she was a little bit, I have a big sister. No, she was older. So see, when there's like a bigger difference than when I was born, she treated me like I was a baby doll. I mean, literally, she thought I was a baby doll. She was very disappointed when I started crying and had diapers, but basically she thought I was the baby doll. Yeah, you have to stay close to your sisters.
Yes.
That's important.
Yeah.
That's important.
Mine was more at the time of the book, like Wednesday Addams, and cut the head off to baby doll. That would have been more my sister.
That's sometimes that's a little too close, But that's fantastic. But there's so much in this book. Really, it is so wonderful. What I love, let's talk a little bit about, you bring in a lot of music and all the important music of the time. And I love how you write about it and how you got introduced to it. And maybe some of your other adventures in school, because you started going to school there.
Yes, I did. I started Frankfurt American Junior High School. I went to 8th grade there, and it was all military brats and a few diplomatic kids. There was I guess an American school, but there was also for diplomatic kids, but then some of the diplomatic families decided to go to the American military school. And I loved it and hated it both at the same time. Loved that you could choose your classes. You had to take an English and a math, and I was horrible at math. But everything else you chose. They would give you a list, and you looked and decided what kind of social studies you were interested in, and you would take that class. There are also multi-age classes. So when I was in 9th grade, I actually took a Civil War class with my little sister, and she was in 7th grade. And it actually made me do better because she was a really good student, so I had to keep up and do well. And at that school, at Frankfurt Junior High School, I had a 9th grade English teacher, Miss McKinnon. I'm going to say her name because I haven't found her yet. If you're out there, I'm still looking for you. I was very shy, and we had to pick a story from the Stars and Stripes, which was the only American newspaper. It's still published, and find a article and write about it. Not just this is what happened, but our feelings about it. And I didn't want to do politics or anything like that. I will get back to the music because actually, whenever I did homework, I put on these gigantic earphones, and there's a playlist in the back of the book, which I'll get to. Miss McKinnon collected my assignment, and the day that she was passing back our assignments, she said, "We're going to read these aloud." I thought, oh my God, what? Read it aloud? I just was hoping to tuck it in my binder and not think about it. We didn't have backpacks back then. And I looked at it, and it said A plus, outstanding. And I was at her desk. That's back when you would go to the teacher's desk. And I thought, how could that be? I wrote about a turtle named George. Some of you may know him. He was found as the last of his species and was brought to the Galapagos Island to reproduce. But back then they didn't know that. They called him Lonesome George, and I wrote it as though I wondered if Lonesome George wanted to be transported. Did he want this? This is what people wanted. And I was very afraid that my classmates were going to laugh at me because I was not reporting it. I was anthropomorphizing it a bit. And after I finished reading it, the room was silent. I thought, oh, here we go. They're going to laugh. It's going to be terrible. And they applauded me. And I stood there, and Miss McKinnon had tears in her eyes. And she told me, "You are a writer." And that was the first time I'd ever heard that. You are a writer. And I shoulda, woulda, coulda gone on, but I thought, no, I'm not good enough. My sister's a better writer, my older sister. She's very flowery, she's a wordsmith. But I always carried that in the back of my mind. I'm a writer, but I can't be because I'm not as good as her. The music. I was introduced to a lot of the things I listened to by, I call him a boy, who lived across the street, Alan. And I was 4 years younger. He was 4 years older. And all of a sudden I noticed him. I hadn't noticed him in the winter. But when he came out in spring, it was like a god was walking out of his door. He was tall and had this dark hair that kind of flopped down. And you remember how 70s boys, if it wasn't real long, it was, I don't know, wavy, just like Apollo. And he came and sat next to me. I was on my curb because I was watching for him. My daughter said, "Oh my God, you were a stalker." I'm like, "No, I wasn't. I was in love." And he would share his books with me, his music. He shared Judy Collins with me. I'd never heard of her. I'd listened to a lot of male musicians whom I loved: Judy Collins, Joni Mitchell, Carly Simon. And I learned, because he would lend me the records, I'd be so careful and play them. You carried your records and you'd hold them on the sides, and then when you'd flip, there was a special move you'd do to not touch the grooves, because if you touched the grooves, the needle would skip. And Linda Ronstadt, and I would wear these big earphones because my dad told me that he thought Judy Collins sounded like a cat screeching. I'm like, oh my God, this Alan recommended this. How could you say this? This blasphemy. Alan said this. And whatever he recommended, I was on it. And to this day, that's what actually helped me write this book. I started listening to the music from that era. You can find anything online. And I have the playlist in the back.
Mhm.
And disco was also very popular. I didn't learn that from Alan, but I learned that from the one radio station we had, American Forces Network, AFN. And they had one channel. And so you would listen all day long for your song because they would play country, they would play bluegrass, they would have a disco hour, they would have a program called Old Gold Retold, where I would hear a lot of music that I'd heard back in the States. They would also play modern music. Late at night, they would play the old radio serial programs. So I listened to The Shadow and I listened to The Lone Ranger. But in order to hear your song, this was the one thing you had. You couldn't stream it. You had to wait. And you waited. And I had this little transistor radio that my dad bought me from Vietnam. And I would it had one earbud. And you plug it into the side. And I'd wait for this music. And Barry Manilow, which of course now you think of him and you think, oh, old people's music. But oh, it was just romantic and beautiful. And I would listen to Could It Be Magic? And I dream in my mind of Alan. And yeah,
Well, it was romantic. None of the new music is romantic. It's just
no,
none of it is romantic,
no,
and none of it can you sing. I don't care who they are. They could be the biggest
no,
stars today, and you can't even hum it. Nothing.
no, no. But Carly Simon, you hear the boom, diddle doo, diddle doo. You think, oh, so you're so vain. You're so vain. We still don't know who was the vain person. Yeah, we still don't know. We know that the second verse is about Warren Beatty. She did share that. But I remember asking Alan, who is she talking about? And he said, I don't know. That's a mystery. And to this day, when I sing, I can sing all those songs when I hear them. Because now, again, you can stream anything. And so as I listened, all my stories came back. And I could picture me. I sat on that curb. My mother would say, don't sit on the curb. You'll get pinworms. I wasn't there naked. I had clothes on. I don't know. But that's what mother said.
Speaking of your mother, let's go back a little bit to her and talk about the book, the Army Wife.
Ah,
Oh, let's talk about that. And I think let's mention also the curtains because I think that's a very funny story.
day 2. We are exhausted, jet lagged still, but my dad wouldn't have it. Mom said we had to spick and span, which I believe is still in existence. It was a scrubbing powder. And when you cleaned your house really well, you spick and spanned it. So we had to clean this gigantic house. And I said, I'm sure the Army's already cleaned it. Why? We've got to spick and span. So the Army had furnished it completely. There were these 1,000-pound thermal lined curtains because back then, my mother told me this. If you had any color but white, you were poor. So there had to be a thermal lining because that showed you were not poor, which I'm like, who cares? Who cares about this? They were connected with these, what were called rollers, which were these round things with a little roller that went on a track. And in order to disengage the rollers, you had to reach your arms above your head because I'm only 5'4". I'm standing on a marble mantle and I'm still not tall enough. And I'm reaching up, disengaging I swear there were 1,000 rollers on every curtain because we got to wash the curtains. Oh, oh my God. These things weigh a ton. And they were in every single window of this gigantic house. And it was my job to take these curtains down. And then, of course, you had to put those back on after they were washed. Mom would iron them. She would starch them with, oh, what was the starch? There was one starch, had a star on it. Can't think of it. Maybe it'll come to you, Patsy. I don't remember it. Yes, the lactic acid was building up. I was young in my shoulders from taking these curtains down. We had to wash walls, ceilings, floors. It was like we had to wash the windows with this ammonia, actual ammonia.
Oh
There was
yeah.
Windex, but
No,
nope,
no, I
no,
know.
we had to use ammonia,
My
which,
mother was the same way about curtains. Absolutely. It
oh,
was exact.
they wait, the weight, the cold would not come through. It's true. But I thought I would rather have no curtains than those rollers. And we didn't have rollers back in the States. We had the hooks, and you'd have to hook them into
Rod. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
rod. Yes.
Yeah.
So that was day two.
Actually, to today, I do not have curtains on my windows. I
I
do
have
not have
I have
curtains.
lace curtains
I don't
because you
have
can,
any.
yeah,
I
it's
don't,
traumatizing.
yeah,
It is
it is.
totally traumatizing. Yeah. The Army Wife. I had never read The Army Wife, and for the research for this book, I ordered from Abe Books, which I love them
Oh,
for,
fantastic. You can get
they
anything there.
are, you can get anything. And I got a 19, oh, the 43 copy. And I will get into Mom, but I read who owned it. And it was Lieutenant Colonel Amaral's wife. And I looked him up because I'm down the research hole. I find that he has died in Vietnam. I found him in newspapers.com. So I wanted to connect her with this book. I still have the book. I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it. But The Army Wife lays out in great and glorious detail how they will dress, how they will set their table, how they will greet their husband at the door. The children are to be clean, silent, and we are not to speak to our father until he has had a drink. We are not to bring we are not to bring up as children
Oh,
events of any disturbing kind. I had no idea. She was living the Army Wife. There's a section on Germany. You are to be the ambassador. I thought, for the love of Pete, that's where she got that speech. It is written out in black and white, and it's unbelievable. And my dad gave it to my mom after they got engaged and said, you can break it off. I want you to read through this because this is what I will expect you to do. And the Army will come first and you will come second. The Army will always come first. And I thought, woo, what an a-hole.
but you married him.
Yes, and I understand why now. You know how you said about my sisters? I grew to understand my dad. After I had my daughter, I had her when I was 39, my dad twinkled. I had never seen the man twinkle in my entire life. He lit up when he held her. And I thought, my dad twinkles. I had no idea. And the two of them were thick as thieves. And they loved science. They loved genealogy. They talked facts and shared science magazines. And I understood why dad married him. My mother, they're both no longer living. They both died in March of last year. My daughter had asked my dad, how long do you want to live, Pop? And he said, long enough to take care of your grandma. And my mother had memory issues for a number of years. She actually didn't know who I was. And I saw my dad, my follow the rules. This is what a wife does. This is how kids are. I saw him do a 180. He took care of my mom so beautifully. He cooked her meals. He would cook her coq au vin and chicken paprikash. These were not sandwiches, and there was no Wonder Bread. I wanted her He wanted to give back. He said, "Your mother was and is the most amazing wife a man, wife and mother a man could ever ask for." He gave back to her. uh, He wouldn't put her in a nursing home. He said, "Your mother looked after you all while I was in Korea and Vietnam." He didn't serve in Korea. He had a year over there when we were toddlers. "And I will do the same for her." He died 5 days after her funeral. He stayed long enough and he died. And it crushed me. But I thought, I'll be damned. He was a good man. And I understood it. And again, it's that whole retrospective. I understood him better after the book because I actually let him read it. And he sent me an email. I'm backtracking some. And he said, the email said, "Good job." And then there was a paragraph of corrections. And I thought, oh my gosh, my dad loves my book. Any military brat would never read that as he loved it. But good job. You had to work for those
To
good
get that.
jobs. Yeah, they were not given, you really had to work for it. You had to earn it. And the corrections were rank or how you wrote a rank. They were not corrections of stories. He did break my heart, though. He called me last year, and he was the one who began calling because my mother didn't know me. And he said, because I sent him the final copy, and he said, "I didn't know you weren't a fan of me those years." And it broke me. I cried. And I, to this day, I'm not a big crier. And I said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. I didn't understand you. And I didn't understand how you could be so nice to other people and buy the book for us. But I'm better for it. I can handle anything, anything." And I've had to handle some tough stuff.
That's what a dad can give you, this kind of strength and this kind of
Yes.
ability to keep going, not to give up. And in the end, they always think of you as their princess, even if you're the middle child. Each of the kids is a prince or a princess to a dad. It all works out in the end, and that's why I love when people write memoirs, and particularly this memoir, Out of Place. It's a great read. There's so much in it. It really takes you back in time. You learn about things, and all the any young people. We have to encourage young people to read it because if you read it, it prepares you for understanding your current situation. And also, you discover all these
Yeah.
things. Right now, young people, this Gen Z, they are looking for some understanding of the past. And when they hear about how carefully we turned over records,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they don't
They have
like
no
what?
idea.
No, no idea, no idea.
And we had to wait for everything. We didn't have a TV the first 2 years there, and I didn't miss it. I really didn't miss it. But when we came back to the States, we had to, like, I still love The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, the original one, but we had to wait. There was one night when it came on, and you had to wait. And now people don't really have to wait for anything.
Exactly.
And it, I am afraid if I'd been a Gen Z person, I wouldn't be the person I am. I would have buried my face in a cell phone and been an introvert and never come. I still am. I prefer a night at home, but I can talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I can, we're all people. I feel like that was the way I was raised. My mother was such a proponent of engaging with whatever culture we were in, whether it was Holland or Germany or Austria, Greece, wherever we went. She said, "You are a guest and do not expect them to speak English. You try to learn their language." She was before her time. She taught me about body language. Who knew about body language? She read voraciously, and she would share these books with me, and um, she taught me about feminism when I mean that world was blowing up at that time. And like you said, younger readers, I think if you read back, my mother was not allowed to wear pants until she was in her 30s. Women were not allowed to wear pants. Girls couldn't wear pants to school until I moved to Germany. But we were still not allowed to wear pants because my mother was afraid we would turn into hoodlums.
Yeah.
So
I
I
know.
didn't. Just so you all know out there, I did not turn into a life of crime.
When I moved to Europe, my father had a couple of things he said to me, but one of the things, you will not wear jeans. You will not wear jeans. He and I never did. I and I always wore heels.
Oh,
Yeah.
me too.
And platforms. I love
I
them.
loved them. I clomped around Europe. I clomped around the junior high school, had cement steps, and the hallways were very small. People said it used to be a jail. I don't know. I can't find any information on it. And I would wear those platform shoes everywhere.
What, on all the cobblestone streets in Europe.
Oh, everywhere, up the steps of old castles. But I had to be in style. I just
Yeah,
had
sure.
to,
That's
I
how I was.
did.
The book is wonderful. There's so much in it. Really, it is fantastic. It's such a great read. I love it. And of course, you are obviously a writer, and so your teacher was right. You have that joy. You put the joy on paper, and you are a joy. And boy, oh boy, I
Thank
don't
you.
know. Your sister must be really gorgeous if you didn't think you lived up to her, because you have turned out to be really gorgeous. It's so nice to see you. I'm
Oh,
so happy. I've been on the radio for 9.5 years, and getting this YouTube channel, it's been great because I get to see people, and I can tell you it's just wonderful to see you. To tell you the truth, I think your face will sell this book. So people have to see you.
ah, this is what I look like without my glasses.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. You look
Isn't
beautiful.
that lovely? Yes, yes. See, normally I wear them on my head because I'm so used to. I teach little kids, and when you teach little kids, they come up to your glasses and they touch them, which is a problem
So,
because then you can't see out of them.
what grades do you teach?
Right now, I am teaching a mixed 3 and 4 year old
Ooh,
class.
I love it.
And I love them. And two of the families came to my debut book opening with their little kids. It
Wow.
meant everything to me.
So it's wonderful that you've come out with this book. I hope that you plan to write another book about. You can write a book, a
Do.
novel, you can write anything, I think, after this.
I just wrote a rom-com.
Ah,
I just need somebody out there to say, that's our girl.
okay.
It's very funny.
As soon as you have it a publisher, and as soon as you have it published, you're going to be back here because I could talk to you for
Thank you,
hours.
Pat.
Okay.
Yes, and me, I could talk to you for hours as well. And I want to thank you so much for reading the book.
I think it's a wonderful book. I love it. And this is how people can contact you.
Yep, that is my Substack. I post once a week. I have not started an author website page yet, mostly because I'm an introvert and I'm just catching up to these things.
Well,
My techno daughter will help me.
it's a learning process. There's a lot to do, but it's a wonderful
Yes, there
book, and
is.
I'm so happy
Thank you.
that you're getting out there. And when you have your next book published, make sure you first come on and do a cover reveal so that we can get pre-orders for you.
Ooh, I will do that. Let's buy
Okay.
new outfits for it, shall we?
Okay, we will. We will.
All right.
And maybe
Pat,
we
thank
will.
you.
Did you wear a headband back in the day?
I didn't because my sister said it made me look like my face was too long, so I didn't wear a headband.
Maybe we'll wear headbands and platform
I
shoes.
love it. And platform shoes. Let's do it. Yeah.
That's it. Okay. Thanks again for being on Joy on Paper Live. And it's been so much fun talking to you. And the name of the book is Out of Place. And it is just a wonderful story. You will love it. It's funny. It's got deep insights into human nature. And we learn a lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye.
house